Hello, those of you who are joining. We're going to wait a little bit and give other folks a chance to chime in, but we'll be starting pretty soon. Let's give it another minute or two here, and then we'll get rolling. All right, well, why don't we go ahead and get started here? Good morning or afternoon, depending on where you are. My name is Jim Quinn. I am the chair of NAHMMA's Policy Committee, also a NAHMMA board member. And we have a couple other policy committee members going to be panelists as well, Julia Mitchell and Jordan Wells. And first, we're going to run through a presentation and want to have plenty of time for Q&A and feedback from y'all towards the end. And feel free to jump on the chat anytime during the presentation with questions or comments that you might want to contribute. And I am going to go ahead and get rolling here. So just for those of you who might not be familiar with NAHMMA, this is the blurb from our website. Some of this goes way back to the beginning of NAHMMA, dedicated to pollution prevention, product stewardship, and the safe and cost-effective handling of household hazardous waste. I selected a picture here of someone actually running an HHW facility, which of course many of our members do, but our members are certainly engaged in a variety of other related activities. We have service providers and regulators and education and outreach folks and kind of a wide variety of different specialties out there. But we think that the policy work that our committee does is important. This is one of our policy committee members thought it would be important to kind of pitch early on. Well, why the heck is policy work important to you if you're involved in any of those different pursuits that our members do? And this is the list that we came up with. It can do things like reduce program implementation costs or increase the efficiency of your programs, or amplify your message at state and federal level, or lever the producers to achieve better recycling and economies of scale, really affect state and federal policy. So these are some of the things that policy work can do to help you out while you do your job. And so the way that I look at it is there's kind of three different approaches that the policy committee can take to do this. And first is communicating with legislative and regulatory bodies. In other words, if there's bills pending, we can give a voice to NAHMMA's concerns or thoughts about the legislation or regulatory changes. Secondly, we partner with a few great dedicated organizations, and we'll talk a little bit more about those and do some work sort of working together and strategizing together. And then finally, educating and motivating y'all, the members, letting you know about what's going on out there and maybe what you can do. So those are kind of the three approaches that I think we can take to maybe even move the needle a little bit on some of the things happening out there. Now, I've been involved with NAHMMA from the very beginning, and I like to bring up this little bit of history here because it's some policy work that NAHMMA did early on and was pretty successful, actually. So something called the Consumer Labeling Initiative. This was going on in the 90s. EPA was looking at the labeling on a variety of different consumer products, hazardous consumer products. And NAHMMA had some concerns about the pesticide labels, and particularly about what it said on the labels about getting rid of them. And back in those days, pesticide labels said, wrap it in newspaper and throw it in the trash. Well, we weren't too happy about that. And so we worked with the CLI process, and some NAHMMA members went to some meetings back in DC and really participated in the discussions. And it had an impact. So the labeling guidance that EPA came up with had some better language in it, that if there was any content still in the container, what you should do is call your local solid waste agency or a toll-free number, if there is one, for disposal instructions, rather than to the old-fashioned throw it in the newspaper concept. So this is something where we actually were able to have an impact early on. And over time, we've written up some policy statements on a variety of different issues. This is a list of some of the different issues that we've tackled and sort of written up what NAHMMA's thoughts on the policy are, and submitted them and distributed them as we thought might be helpful. Early on, we were really focusing on product stewardship and chemical policy reform, and came up with a statement, a sort of overarching big picture statement about those that is on our website. And then residential medicines, in other words, drug take back was an early one that we focused on as well. Paint stewardship, of course, of interest to a lot of NAHMMA members. And we wanted to weigh in on that and hoping to help move that forward, getting more states up and running with paint care. Producer responsibility for HHW, that's a broad spectrum bill that would make the producers take responsibility for a wide spectrum of HHW. And kind of exciting, actually, Vermont just recently, their House and Senate recently did pass such a bill, but they would be the first state in the US. Many Canadian provinces have something along these lines, but if Vermont's governor signs that bill, they would be the first US state to actually have a widespread HHW producer responsibility program. So that's exciting stuff. We did a declaration about dental mercury use. So these are some of the different kind of statements that we carefully thought about and wrote up and used as we saw fit. Another one is legislation support. So when there's actually bills pending, going ahead and getting NAHMMA's input onto those bills. This is a list of some of them that we've done, going back to some early stuff that Maine did, a couple of bills in California on Pharmaceuticals, called the Colorado Paint Bill. That was an interesting one because I actually got some feedback from a state legislator on that one, saying that NAHMMA's input actually helped sway him on that. So that was great to hear as a concrete benefit of what we're doing. Oregon was trying to get an HHW bill. Unfortunately, that has fizzled out after many attempts, but NAHMMA tried to help move that one forward. And then last year, California had a variety of different bills out there that our policy committee put together some support messages for, and several of them did in fact pass. Now, the state level is the most common, but the local level occasionally comes into play with the safe medicine disposal, the drug take back. Alameda County was a pioneer there, and we gave some support there. And that, of course, leveraged some of the additional drug take back bills that have gone on since then. That was a very sort of key moment back there. And even at the federal level, TSCA reform, when that was in play a few years back, we weighed in on that as well. So mostly state, but also some smaller or larger level stuff as well. Now, technically, most of what we do isn't considered lobbying under the law, so we don't really run into that kind of consideration. There are, of course, some legal limits about lobbying, but really only if, first of all, if you spend money on them is a key measure of whether or not something is considered lobbying for the purposes of those regulations. But also it has to be something that is introduced legislation or a draft bill. So any kind of conversations outside of that context, that's not considered lobbying either. And there are also state laws which vary as well, but thus far this has not come into play because of what we do doesn't involve money and just really doesn't get into the realm of lobbying under the IRS definitions. I mentioned legislative stuff. There's also regulatory stuff, regulations, implementing regulations. One example of that we worked on, EPA's labeling for pesticides and ingredients that were called inert. Well, there was a broad coalition of organizations who thought that the word inert was kind of misleading on pesticide labels. And in fact, some of those so-called inert ingredients are more hazardous than some of the active ingredients. And so there's been a move afoot to try and get that changed. This is a quote from our statement about it, that should be full disclosure of what's in there. And unfortunately, this hasn't totally come to fruition. But if you look at a pesticide label these days, you'll see that the use of that inert term is not nearly as widespread as it used to be. They might say other ingredients or that sort of thing. So the trend is going away from that, although we haven't really achieved an outright prohibition on that. I mentioned partnering, and we've got some great partners that we work with that have members on our policy committee. The Product Stewardship Institute, of course, they've been around a long time, and NSAC, the National Stewardship Action Council, doing a lot of great work. Jordan represents that group. The California Product Stewardship Council as well. So a number of great organizations that are leading the way on some of the legislation that's out there, partnering with them and talking about priorities and helping each other out when we can. There are other organizations that we've worked with over time. Some of the regional product stewardship councils that are out there on pesticides. There's NCAP here in the Northwest. On chemical policy, we worked with an organization called Safer Chemicals, Healthy Families. The Mercury Policy Project on the dental amalgam issue. The Chemical Policy and Science Initiative out of Lowell. So other organizations over the years as well. And as I mentioned, educating NAHMMA members. There's a variety of different ways that we do that. So if you haven't gone to the policy section of our website, go ahead and do that, nahmma.org/policy. There's a couple of fact sheets on there. We'll talk a little bit more about those in a minute, and some of those policy statements that I talked about. And of course, webinars like this, at NAHMMA's annual conferences and regional conferences. Typically, you'll find a couple sessions on policy matters. We've gotten some stories in the NAHMMA newsletter. So a variety of different channels to try and get NAHMMA members up to speed on some of this stuff. So fact sheets is something that we tackled last year. And we do have a couple of published fact sheets, and I'd like to take a little bit of time to walk through those. And we are working on cooking up a couple more. And we think that it's pretty topical to talk about batteries. Lithium batteries in particular are a huge problem in facilities around the country right now. So we've been getting some more information about batteries. And then mercury containing lamps. There's various moves afoot to get those banned. So we're wanting to support those as well. These fact sheets really talk a lot about sort of the practical aspects of these wastes, but also with the focus on the policy recommendations that NAHMMA has. So at this point, what I'd like to do is switch gears for a moment and pull up one of our fact sheets. Let's see how I can do that. Or Julie, were you going to pull it up, or do you want me to pull it up?
Oh, I have the Marine Flare fact sheet ready to go.
Okay, yeah. Why don't you do that then?
Sorry, is everybody seeing that okay? Or Jim?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, great. So thanks, Jim. So this is a good example of one of the efforts of the policy committee. We have a Marine Flare fact sheet, and what this piece is, and then Jim, I'll also let you sort of walk through this a little bit. But this was something where it's a resource that's available to our members. And, so this is a resource that's available to our members. So as this issue comes up in their particular jurisdictions, municipalities, it just helps to educate our members, and then shows a little bit about what the issues are and some of the challenges around it. And then also gives some alternatives to the issue, and then talks a little bit about NAHMMA's position on it. So Jim, is there anything else that you want to say around this?
Not really, just emphasizing that we tried to put in a bunch of really practical, useful information for NAHMMA members who might be encountering this stuff in their collection programs, but kind of tying that into the policy work that we're doing. So yeah, so the two that we have completed are on the NAHMMA website, and if you haven't seen them, I encourage you to go take a look. The other one being focused on compressed gas cylinders, so not just the propane cylinders, but a variety of other cylinders as well. So thanks, Julie.
Yeah, no problem. Would you like me to pull up the pressurized container one?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
Would you like me to pull up the pressurized container?
Sure, let's take a quick walk through that. We got plenty of time here.
Give me 1 second. Yeah, I'll pull that up. Okay, so hopefully folks are seeing that as well. And Jim, you go ahead and walk us through that.
I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time understanding you.
I'm sorry, and, get this up and, if you want to go off us through this, if you want. Can you hear me okay? I'm sorry, is that a little bit better?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. My microphone is, it's giving me some issues.
So yeah, this one's a little bit longer. We start with definitions and really talking about the different types of pressurized containers. This one focuses both on compressed gases and aerosol cans. Both of these are something that we think are causing big problems in transfer stations. We hear anecdotally propane cylinders exploding, even aerosols causing problems. And so that's one of the reasons we focused on this. And so the fact sheet goes on to walk through a lot of the different management options that are out there. I don't know if you want to scroll down. Yeah, so some of the different ways you'll see, it's interesting, you'll see NAHMMA members handling these things in a variety of different ways. And so what we do is we lay out some of the different options that people have tried out there, and people have different considerations as far as the staff levels and staff training and local service providers that they have. So we lay out a variety of different options that are out there, and that hopefully helping you figure out which one might be best for you. And then, yeah, aerosols with contents, but also empty aerosols. There's been some debate over those and whether they should go as curbside. And so we dive into some of the details of that debate. And then a variety of other types of cylinders are out there, which in my opinion can be one of the most hazardous things that HHW programs encounter. Old rusty compressed cylinder with some nasty gas in it can cause a huge problem. So a variety of information and options for dealing with those. And then going into some more detail on if you get those big commercial gas cylinders, and some tips on that as well. All right, thanks, Julie. All right, I'm going to go back to my presentation here. Okay. So one of the things that we'd like to do is get NAHMMA members more interested, involved in this stuff. And so this is some thoughts about, well, what the heck can you do? And here's some ideas. One is that if you work for a government agency, if you go through channels with your agency, you may be able to get the issue onto the agency's legislative agenda, or maybe you'll be able to get permission to advocate on the issue as a member, as a representative of that agency. But again, do go through channels on this. You might be able to share information on what you're doing policy-wise with other NAHMMA members. If you're an educator, this is one that I like to advocate. If you're an educator, see about including information about the concept of product stewardship and the concepts of chemical policy in some of the public information materials that your agency is putting out there. Even if you're not acting on behalf of your agency, as an individual, there are things you can do. I understand letters to the editor actually can have an impact. And finally, if hopefully we're piquing somebody's interest out there, and you can join our committee and help us move stuff forward through the policy committee. Now, one question that's come up is, what about the NAHMMA chapters? Some of the NAHMMA chapters have members interested in policy issues. And really, there's an argument that the chapters may be more in touch with what's going on legislatively in their states. And so one option is that a chapter could provide input to legislation, and that's certainly an option that's allowed. We would like some consultation with the policy committee for you to do that, but showing up as a chapter representative at a legislative comment is certainly one route to take. One thought that we had is maybe each chapter could designate a policy liaison and someone that focuses on the policy matters in that region. So that's a thought we'd like to throw out there. So the other thing that we want to do is hear, gosh, what issues are of interest to you all out there. Hopefully some of you have some thoughts on issues that you think we should tackle or strategies that you think we should use. And so this is some contact information, and mine and Julie's. And then we've also got Jordan Wells on board, and she does tons of legislative work in California. So any questions you might have about sort of the nitty-gritty of the legislative process, she's a good person to ask. So at this point, I wish we could actually chat with you all, but if you have questions, why don't you go ahead and throw them in the chat, and especially if you have thoughts on what issues are topical that you think we should tackle these days. What waste streams or other policy issues do you all think are important?
And Jim, while you're waiting for, I think, folks to write in the chat, I can give access to folks who are watching to speak. So if you would like me to give that ability, I'm happy to do that.
Okay. I think that would be a good way to go if anyone is willing to step up. I do have several people still on the line. So any of y'all have thoughts on what the committee might, or other questions or comments about the presentation? Or Julie or Jordan, anything you want to add?
I think I would add that, it's really those of us that are trying to pass state laws, even local ordinances, having, the local and state entities being able to, take positions on bills and quickly. Things move really quickly in the legislative process. So what we've done, and I know this was in the PowerPoint, is had cities and counties pass what are they called now? I can't even think of the name, but they're policies essentially that say that they can take legislation, let's say on product stewardship, because it aligns with what the entity advocates for, and so that they're able to, if there's a paint recycling bill in the legislature, they're able to act quickly on that because they've already established that's part of their priorities. So it's just really helpful when we can get cities and counties especially, and businesses to act quickly and be able to submit a comment, sign on to a letter, etc.
And thanks, Jordan. That's thanks for bringing that point up. And I just wanted to add that we have so many of our jurisdictions that are trying to put legislation forth, and I know that batteries is very topical. And Washington State was able to just recently, the governor just signed EPR for batteries bill, and so there are several opportunities for our organization and definitely our committee to help support those efforts. And so even if, say, maybe it's something where I don't know if there's like particular restrictions within perhaps your agency, and as Jim had talked about, making sure that you check in and follow your protocols, you can always approach us, and then it's another way as an organization and as this committee can help support something that your agencies are in support of, but want to be a little careful around their approach of how they do it if there's some sort of lobbying restrictions. So I guess that's a pitch for our members to use us in that capacity. And I think we got a question.
Good point.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, I wanted to share that, NSAC is a resource. We've passed, a lot of these bills we've worked on, especially in California. We've learned a lot of lessons. I have 2 slides just on all the lessons we've learned. And so we're here to help you. We want to make sure that, the rest of the nation is passing high bar bills. So yeah, we're a resource for you. Please reach out. We have our contact information at the last slide, and we're here to help you.
Great. Shelley, you had a question or comment.
Yeah, I guess so. I'm coming from like the HHW world, right? And that's basically all I know. So other than like just reaching out to you folks, what are like good first steps for folks to do if they're wanting to like dip their foot into the policy world, right? So if we're seeing HHW legislation or battery legislation, like how do other states like see these things and start picking up where you folks started? Like, what is a good starting point for noobs like me?
Oh, well, I guess my first thought is our partner organizations whose bread and butter is policy work. Jordan's organization, NSAC, PSI, California Product Stewardship Council. They're doing this stuff day in and day out, and so I see them as the experts. And going to their websites, and a lot of background information and details are on their websites. So that would be my thought.
Yeah, and I would say, we start collecting data. We really have to, for us to be able to, to get legislators on board, they have to understand the gravity of the problem. So that's what we really rely on you folks for, is to get that great data. I would say it's really important to find political champions. Ours here in California, one of them is Senator Allen. He's, he passed the EPR bill for packaging. And so, trying to get your allies in the legislature set up and build that trust and great relationship there. And then I would also say, there's always an opportunity for legislators to be able to talk to the other legislators in other states that have already passed these policies, so that they understand, kind of what obstacles they ran into, why they decided to, go this route versus another. So those are just a couple of things that I would suggest. And, making sure it's on your platform and you're communicating with your legislators on what issues you're having to grapple with.
Another thing is now we are, when I say we, NAHMMA as an organization, we had the listserv as a tool for a lot of years, but then that got put on pause because of all kinds of technical issues. But now we are back with the Google form, and we'll be linking it to that on our website. And that's a great way to reach out and say, we are looking at this particular issue, or we're trying to try and get a policy, or we'd like to get a policy around this particular waste stream or issue. And just to start the process that way by asking the question to the members. So that's another resource that we're getting back online.
Great idea. Reach out to other members and say, hey, does anyone know anything more about this issue? Yeah. Shelley, is that helpful?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
I wanted to circle back to one issue that's kind of near and dear to my heart that I touched on briefly, which is the broad HHW stewardship concept, and the fact again that Vermont House and Senate has passed such a bill, and we're crossing our fingers that the governor will sign it. If and when that happens, in my opinion, that could be a real game changer. I mean, yes, it's great that we've got Paint Care stepping up for paint, and a couple other stewardship organizations out there for 1 or 2 materials, but this broad spectrum of hazardous stuff that's coming out there and requiring the manufacturers to step up and take some responsibility for that, to me, that could just be just a sea change for how HHW is managed. Of course, the devil is always in the details, and people might have a lot of questions and worries about how that will play out and how that might impact their program. And certainly something I've put a lot of thought into over the years, but I'm just excited about this possibly taking off in Vermont. And I don't know, I know in King County, there's some talk about whether that's something you want to do at a local level there. I don't know if you want to say any more about that, Julie, or.
Sure, happy to. Yes, that is something that at the county level, and again, that's why I was really glad that Jordan had touched on kind of getting down to some of the lowest levels of government. But me and my colleagues at the facilities have provided quite a bit of data to the local King County. Well, my agency has policy people, and we've provided that information. And then I think there's a little bit we're taking a look at a broader reach other than just my county. But it is something not only have we looked at, but we've had serious conversations with our local council people, and then tried to get on the dockets of some of the state legislators to try and build that little, well, to start to build some support. So yeah, we're looking at doing something similar, or at least introducing something similar.
And I will say in California, we weren't able to get the pharmaceutical and sharps industry to the table until we passed 13 ordinances in cities and counties. So, having that local action helps drive a statewide conversation. Something unique that we're doing right now, we're working on a project. I can't mention the county, but we're working on an EPR, household hazardous waste framework, where the county could add in different products that aren't currently covered by state law, and alleviate the costs that they're currently having to pay for their HHW program and certain products. So we're hoping that this can be a model that we can implement at the state level. It was one of the recommendations. It was actually the first recommendation of the California Commission on Recycling Markets and Curbside Recycling, which our executive director chaired. And it's just another idea that folks can maybe pull from. I think we're the first to ever work on something like this, and we think it'll be a model.
Cool. Yeah. And let us know when it's time for NAHMMA to weigh in on that one.
Oh, I will.
How about the rest of you? We haven't heard from yet. Any thoughts on what policy changes you'd like to see out there that might help you with your work, or with particular waste streams that you think deserve some attention? Anyone else want to chime in here? Maybe not. All right, well, that's kind of all we have prepared for y'all. So I don't know if anybody has any sort of final thoughts here, or anything else.
Spread the word. Tell other folks in your chapter to join us. We'd love to have them. And yeah, for me, thank you everybody that made the time.
Yep, same. Our contact information was on the slide, but this is being recorded, so feel free to reach out to any one of us. And yeah, that's that we're able to join.
Okay. Well, thanks a lot, everybody, and let us know if you want to get active. All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, you guys. Do you mind if I post your slides up on the website so folks have access to those?
Not at all. That'd be great.
All right, I'll get with you on that. All right, thanks, everybody.
Thanks.